It's finally here, the Faction Wars, something I've talked about ad nauseum at this point on all my tier lists. Well, now we get to talk about that, and we also got a brand new Lloyd, which I'll go over if it's worth summoning him. So let's start with Lloyd. Okay, here's the banner. Let's click on the exchange button and click on Lloyd and see what he does. He is a rank 4 strategy type pilot, has pretty decent stats overall. Actually, they're okay. Let's go to the abilities. I always wanted to try this. Upon deployment, increases the Nightmare Frame skill gauge of all ally units within range by 87.5%. And its other ability is reduces this unit's redeploy time by 30%, and the redeploy time of all ally units is reduced by 20% during combat. So here are my thoughts on this new Lloyd. The first reason why you'd want to summon him is the fact that he is a multi-tool. A multi-tool, if you're not familiar, is a character that can work on any given faction, which means that in faction wars, when you are limited by a specific faction, you can use Lloyd on that team even though he may not be associated with them. For example, you can use him on Black Knights or Ashford even though he's technically a Britannian unit. So multi-tools are very useful. There aren't many in the game, so if you have a couple, it could definitely come into play. The next thing useful about this Lloyd is the fact that he increases the skill gauge by all pilots in range instead of just one pilot like Dorothea, and I'm pretty sure he increases his own skill gauge as well. Also, unlike Dorothea, his is 87.5% and Dorothea's is 50%, so obviously he's much better. And for a strategy type pilot, having over 700 attack power as your long range is really good. So these things make Lloyd a really good pilot. So what's the problem with him then? Well, if you didn't notice, that cost is 12, which is really high. Now granted, in the first year anniversary update, it'll go down to 6 if you upgrade him to level 15. But that's obviously a long way from now. In the moment, 12 as a cost is pretty high, and there aren't too many pilots in the game that can reduce it, like say Guilford. So you're basically working with a strange contradiction where, because he does have really high cost, it's not that easy to deploy him, withdraw him, and then redeploy him to the battlefield like other strategy type pilots. And because his stats are terrible, like all strategy type pilots, you can't keep him on the battlefield long term, even though that long range attack is pretty good, because his durability is not. So it's very hard to use this Lloyd. Now the reduction in the redeployment time by all pilots is pretty good, but we did just get Summer Cecile in the last banner, well not the last banner but the summer banner, and she does the same thing. We'll get another Cecile down the road that's even better than this Lloyd, or I think it's actually about the same. And of course, the original Cecile also has a reduction in the redeployment time of all pilots, but they are not multi-tools like this Lloyd, which is why he has the advantage. But when you consider the other factors, I don't know if it's worth summoning him. And to add to that, the ability to increase the Nightmare Frame skill gauge is very niche. It's not something you're going to be using that much. At least I don't use it that much. I have Dorothea, I never use her, and Lloyd is basically the same thing. Now you might say, well, I mean, if it gets the skill gauge higher, why wouldn't I use it? Well, some pilots like Cornelia, Anya, C2, and so forth already increased their skill gauge fast enough that having Lloyd in there seems more like a win more than something that's absolutely vital. Remember, you have a limited number of roster spots, and every pilot on the team has to be useful at all times, or at least most of the time. And this Lloyd, that's not the case. Now, for certain things like the Nightmare Frame boss battle, or for maybe certain extra missions, yeah, he's pretty useful. For 90% of missions, not so much. So consider that as well. And he's also a unlimited pilot, so you don't even have to really go for him right now if you want him. Although I will say once he joins the main banner, it'll become increasingly hard to acquire him. There will also be other multi-tools in the game that are way better than this Lloyd. So if you were interested in getting a multi-tool, I would wait until the next one, which I believe is Dalton, who's way better than this Lloyd. It should be noted that the other Lloyd reduces all members of the Special Corps by 2, so if you combine him with this Lloyd, the cost will be reduced by 2, making him easier to use on the battlefield. But also keep in mind, he's got to be level 99 for that cost reduction and fully upgraded, so it's a very expensive investment to do that. But I want to be thorough by mentioning that the other Lloyd does help out this one. Now let's move on to how the faction wars work. Okay, so here's all the different things you can do. Let's go to challenges. Now we have to go to this section right here, the challenge event. So what you'll notice is that there are 3 weeks, and each week has a certain faction that you can only use. So we have Britannia, Black Knights, and Ashford Academy. Then if you go into one of these, you'll notice there's a completion time of 12/1 and 12/4. So when this expires, basically 12/1, which is December 1st, you'll have until December 4th to complete this one. And I believe the other ones follow the exact same pattern. And you have to complete all, I think it's 24, to get all the different awards. So we go to the mission awards, which is right here. So you see if you complete all 24, you'll get all the Nightmare Frame upgrade cubes. If you complete different missions individually, you also get additional awards. No money though, like Sakuradite, which kind of sucks, but you do get really nice upgrade items, which I think do somewhat compensate for it. So that's how that works. And then another thing I would suggest doing, let's go back to the challenge maps real quick here. Okay, we're back with the missions. Let me just click on this right here and go into this challenge. I'm not gonna actually go through the mission itself. I just want to show you something here. So first of all, you'll notice that certain pilots are red out. That means you can't use them. But what I did is I made a Britannia team. And I recommend making a Britannia team, Black Knights team, and an Ashford team. That way you don't have to keep making a new team every single time to complete these challenges. When you want to select a pilot, again, you'll notice that all the ones you can't use are red out. And also make sure to use the filters right here to only grab pilots you can use. So here's all the Britannia stuff, and there you go. If I was to get rid of all of them right here, you would see just a sea of red, which is what you see right here. But that's how the event works. It's pretty straightforward. Just build a really strong team in each faction and try to complete as many missions as you can and as fast as you can so you don't miss the cutoff date. So this Lloyd was not the only new unit that we just got in this recent update. The other one is the Athletic event, which consists of a brand new Cornelia, Guilford, and Euphemia. And you can learn about that right here.